welcome you all for this show. This is completely arranged by campus radio team, and today's program actually it was deferred for the sad demise of our former president, Mr. Mukhopadhyay. Today we are here. Let me introduce the other people who are here. Professor Swapan Datta, he was one of the members who is here with us from the very beginning of the journey of IISER Kolkata. We are going to listen to him regarding the history of IISER Kolkata, how it developed from a stage. Many of you, those are younger students, you may not know that what kind of struggle, what kind of challenges. And Professor Datta is a person who can remember everything with data. So we are going to see or listen from him that how the development of IISER Kolkata has happened. And then I have two other persons who really requires no introduction. Both of them probably the best teachers of IISER Kolkata at this moment. Professor Ananda Dasgupta, head of the department Physical Sciences, and Professor Subhajit Bandyopadhyay, Associate Dean of Academic Affairs, which is the secondary affiliation for him, but Professor of Chemistry. So all of you must agree with me that taking the classes of Ananda Dasgupta and Subhajit Bandyopadhyay is something really memorable for all of you. So let us start our journey. I will request Professor Datta to tell about something how IISER Kolkata from those old days in Kolkata.
Shall I start? I'll start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please do.
Thank you, Balaram, Ananda, Subhajit, whom I can see. First of all, let me say that I do not believe much in recollections, remembrances, and history. When I was allowed to leave this institute after 4 years, I joined in the very beginning. It was in fact 16th of August 2006. But I remember my farewell ceremony where I had made the comment that once I go away, there is no particular need to call me back again. And from Rabindranath Tagore, যখন পড়বে না মোর পায়ের চিহ্ন এই বাটি তখন নাইবা মনে রাখে। I believe in that. However, it's customary in society also to look back with pleasure generally. We always say our old memories are golden. But that's because mostly we forget the so-called pangs and pains, anguish. We do not remember those, we only remember the good things. That's why the old memory is often very pleasing to look at. I had originally come to this institute mainly because the founder director, Professor Dasgupta, was my classmate in MSc. We had a long association. We went to the USA together. We both graduated from Calcutta University MSc class, 1967. And he went to some university in New York, and I went to North Carolina. Then after several years, when I had come back, he also came back. There were several of my classmates who stayed back in the US, but we did come back. And I was later on in my career in the Nuclear Science Center, which is called University Accelerator Center. I'm basically a nuclear scientist. And he was in Jawaharlal Nehru University. He was the Dean of the Physical Science, Department of Physical Science. At that time, we again had a close association. So after I retired, he did ask me to join this institute. He was to be the director here. And since I had retired at the age of 60 and I still had a few years of work, I thought, so I decided to join. And it was a very pleasing experience. The trials and tribulations of the first years or so was actually fairly challenging at that time. I remember that in 16th August of 2006, there was a inauguration ceremony. The chief guest was the Governor of West Bengal, Sri Gopal Krishna Gandhi. The other members in the team who came on the dais was Professor Shishir Dubey. He was the project director of the Kharagpur. He was actually director of Kharagpur IIT because we were housed in the Kharagpur IIT campus at that time. He was still the project director. Sushanta was the newly appointed director. Professor Vikas Sinha, who was the director of VCC and SINP at that time, was a member of the governing board. And Gopal Krishna Gandhi, of course, was the honored chief guest. But there was another gentleman, Balu Subramaniam by name. He was a research director of some institute in Hyderabad. And he spoke on science education. I do not remember much of these, except that Gopal Krishna Gandhi had stated that he wanted to give a very short speech. And he did tell these students who were all there that they had taken a great risk in life. They were the pioneers. They were the trailblazers, the first batch of the IISER. The IISER, of course, was an unknown name at that time. Apparently, from the history, the Scientific Advisory Council of the Prime Minister had recommended Professor CNR Rao, later on Bharat Ratna. He was chairman of that committee, and he had recommended that just as the IITs were the institutes of excellence for technological and engineering training, there should be something in the science in similar vein. And apparently it was accepted, and this by some law parliament, which was enacted, and the institute started. Pune and Kolkata were the two institutes which started in 2006. And later on in 2007, the one in Mohali, IISER Mohali, and 2008, Bhopal and Thiruvananthapuram also came. Now I believe it's much more, 7 or something. But at the time I left in 2010, it was still. We had the accommodations only in NITTTR. There is 39 students. They were housed in the hostels. And their canteen, etc. also they could attend. Their theoretical classes were held in one room, one lecture hall, which the Kharagpur IIT was gracious enough to make available to us. And Ananda Dasgupta is in fact the one who delivered the first lecture. It was in classical mechanics, physics 101, I think, on 17th of August. 16th of August, we had the inauguration ceremony in the NITTTR auditorium, which was in their second floor. In the third floor, a room was given to the Sushanta was director, but there was also a deputy director at that time. He was called academic coordinator. This was Professor Lahi. I forget the first name. He started with S, and he was also there for a while. And we had the laboratory rooms given to us. 3 laboratories actually: physics, chemistry, and biology. Earth science was added later. In 2007 only earth science was added. Although both Somnath Dasgupta and Nibir Mondal, who were the founding members, so to speak, of the party, they used to be around even in 2006, but the classes started in 2007. So the laboratory setup was a challenge. In fact, my main duty at that time was the setting up of the physics laboratory. The chemistry laboratory, my fellow people who were appointed, all as visiting, myself and Subhajit was in physics, and Purnagupta Bhattacharya, who I believe is still in physics, and Pradeep Bag, these were the 2 members in chemistry. Jyotirmoy Bhattacharya, who left, these were much younger people. I was a retired person, but these were people in their middle of their career. And I think Dr. M.C. Mondal, Vitai Chandra Mondal, who was again an old person, he also took care of that. The permanent members came later on. In October, I believe, Taposh Chendukku was around. He also used to be around. So she probably joined in. Then Sukumar Molli, he joined as the he was not called registrar, he was only called controller of admissions, examiner, controller of examination. Later on, he became the academic. After Professor Lahiri left, I believe Lahiri was associated only for us. My second semester for Goli over as the academic. And in the office staff, there was some gentleman who looked after finance. I forget his full name, but his initial name was Topu. maybe Topon Shorkar or Topon Shinmukta or something. And then Pushkar. Pushkar is still with me. Pushkar was also, he had a temporary position. In the director's PA, it was probably Shorkishna, but again I'm not sure. Director had a room in the third floor or fourth floor of that Kolkata IIT. And there was a library room also given, and Shabedi also joined more or less at the same time. A few days after I joined, Shabedi was also there. Then there were some attendants. In the physics was Subhash Malu and Ananda. Then in chemistry was Sudhanshu Mai. I remember in biology there must have been somebody, but I can't. And there was somebody called Ojoy who was probably director's attendant or something. I remember the first class we had, all the four laboratories were together, myself and Abhijit, then Dr. Mondal and Jyotirmoy, Orna and Pradip. We sat together. We divided people in various groups. There are 40 people. Of course, we did not have enough experience. The challenge of the physics I remember vividly because I managed to get some instrumentation called Phoenix. It is an experimental interface from my previous institution, Nuclear Science Center. With this, I could start some experiments because this was a new concept and the students, of course, enjoyed this. That it's an interface by which in computer I start some programs and the interface between real life and this computer was that Phoenix box. I don't know much about it. In later version, experimental eyes we use later. So there are some simple experiments like measurement of acceleration due to gravity and pendulum and a few others we could do. Every day I had to go to College Street and give some new experiments. The first semester was a challenging thing. We had made a list of very sophisticated, good experiments, but they never came before the second semester started. In any case, because the number of people were less, the camaraderie was there that we used to meet sometime in the evening and had Buri and Telebhaja. Gupta used to bring these things. The students also, we were appointed mentors of the students. For 30-40 people, some 6 or 7 of our faculty, each were assigned some 6-7 people. Though frankly, I would say that I never had much chance because they never came to me and I never bothered to go and check. Most of my time went in setting up that lab. The theoretical part, Ananda can tell much better than I do. He was teaching physics, and I believe Topon Pine was the person who took care of chemistry. And then Dhrubajyoti Chatterjee, he later on, he was probably pro-vice chancellor of Calcutta University at that time or somewhat later. Dhrubajyoti was there. He took care of the biology. And mathematics, I do not fully remember, but I vaguely recall the name of Rana Borua. Perhaps you can tell if it was so. In the practical laboratories, I already told the names. I also remember somebody called Dolu. He probably took care of the computer at that time. Then by and by, of course, many people came. Second semester was much better because the instruments that we had ordered had come. And the people who did the various level physics experiments in the first semester with apparatus from Kaustav now had access to the sophisticated things like air track, air table, and lots of other things, projectiles, compound pendulum, and so on and so forth. In any case, our major problem was that at the end of the year, we had to move to the Kharagpur IIT's extension building. A new 4-story building had come. I think CNR Rao probably came to inaugurate this, that the tablet would still be there. Then Buddhadev Bhattacharya was Chief Minister of West Bengal at that time. And he had also come in this new building, the Kharagpur IIT extension building. That was our second year. In the third year, when we moved to Mohanpur campus, then again we had to pack up lock, stock and barrel and then bring everything. It was a real pain. There again some ministers used to come. Ghosh was local minister of state of something. He had often visited the lab. There are other members. Srijukta Gopal Krishna Gandhi also came to the new campus, but it was in 2009. There was also a ceremony, I remember in 2007 sometime. It was held in the Horinghata Mohanpur campus. This was the land transfer ceremony. There again, Bankim Ghosh was there, one of the MP, Alokesh Das. Him I knew because he was a student of me in Kullan University. He had come, and the Jela Shabhadipati Rama Vishwas was there. By the sum of ₹1, the entire land was transferred to IISER's account. This much I remember. In any case, there were many problems with students also, etc. When we went into the Mohanpur campus, we had new kitchens had to be started. Some students wanted to have their thoroughly vegetarian, Jain food and so on. Several disciplinary problems also came. But anyway, we went along, and I remember Shushanto's 60th birthday. This was also arranged. Balaram had taken, in fact, one prominent role in that, I remember. Sriram also. That there I had remarked that this institute was paying a tribute to the founder director, fine, but the real tribute to be when this institute really grows up and makes a mark in the world. And I believe it has done so. That was 14 years ago. Institute has now, Balaram tells me, some 1,400 students. We started with 40. It has really grown. I know that there are national honors that many of you have won. And it's the IISER definitely has made a name for itself in the campus, and I wish it all success in life. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Datta. So now the journey begins. Ananda Dasgupta.
Yeah, as the oldest serving member, I guess, well, oldest at least in terms of years, I think I can sort of add a bit to Swapan's recollections, except that, well, I did not remember, for example, who were present in the dais in the inauguration ceremony. You know, that's exactly why I suggested that Swapan is the one person who can remember everything. But I don't know whether it was deliberate, but he omitted another funny story about the inauguration, which I happened to attend. So let me just tell you that. The idea was that, well, like in all inaugurations, the chief guest will come in. Chief guest, of course, was the governor then. He will come in. The plan was he will come in, he will sit down, and then, of course, everybody else will also sit down in the hall, and then an opening music will be played, opening song. So it all went more or less okay, except that just before the governor finally took his seat and sat down, somebody jumped the gun and started the music. And the governor stayed standing. As a result, the whole hall had to stay standing along with him. Now, the particular song that was being played then was Agune Porushmoni, one of the longer songs by Rabindranath Tagore. So I'm not sure whether it has ever happened in history that a whole hall full of people had to keep on standing for 8 minutes or so, for which the whole song ran, perhaps twice. It seemed like the song was running twice. And because the governor did not sit down, we could not. So that was how we started, standing to Agune Porushmani for quite a long time. Okay, and well, coming back to my own involvement with IISER, it was a bit accidental. And well, actually it came in through a slightly unfortunate circumstance. The person who was supposed to teach the physics course at the very beginning is one of my teachers, Shabanda, another of Shabanda's classmates, and one of the best teachers I have ever come across. Some of the old students would definitely remember him. He came and joined us later, Ranjan Bhattacharya. So I'm pretty sure Balaram and Subhajit have great memories of him. He was the one who was supposed to take the first class. But just before, and I was nowhere in the picture, frankly. Just before this started, about a couple of months before the inauguration, he unfortunately developed an eye problem, a rather severe eye problem, and he had to go in for an emergency operation. So at the last moment, IISER was short of a physics teacher. So somehow I think RB was the one who recommended me. So I got roped in to give the lecture, at least give the course. And so as I keep on saying, being the best at something is not really very secure. Somebody or the other can always come in and be better than you. But being the first has the advantage that nobody, unless they have invented a time machine, can beat you at that. So I happened to be the one who took the very first class in any IISER. For the simple reason that we started one day before Pune or 2 days before Pune. And because we started 2 days before Pune and the first class happened to be a physics class, I happened to be the teacher who took the very first class in an IISER system. That, as I said, was absolutely by accident. It was not really through design. But okay, Swapan has already told us about what the classes used to be like at that time. But I think one thing he did omit to mention, and this is something which students later has confirmed. The very first semester that we had a lot of problems, of course. We had a huge number of problems in accommodation. Students were accommodated in one place. They had to come to take classes in another place sometimes. And what was actually the real problem was all the highly expensive equipment that had been ordered were all stuck up in customs or in flight. So we had 2 days before the lab started, I remember this distinctly, Swapan told us that no equipment is coming, so something has to be done about the lab. So of course, he's a very resourceful person, so he took our attendant Subhash Malo, and I don't recall helping much, except that I perhaps gave the names of a few Calcutta-based suppliers at that time. So in the first semester lab, in almost all subjects, and especially in physics, it was more or less a wonderful example of jugaad, the kind that Indians do all the time, getting things from here, putting entirely unrelated things together and so on. And as you mentioned, the Phoenix boxes came in very handy. And because I had some role to play there, because Python was the language Phoenix had to be coded in, and I was one of the few people around who knew Python at that time. So our first students, even before their computer course, had to get a Python course just to run the Phoenix boxes. But what I wanted to say is, these students had the advantage of getting hold of those highly expensive, precise experiments later. But they have always said to me, at least, that they enjoyed the first semester lab the most. The one where they could put things together by their own hands and get the satisfaction of seeing things being brought together, trying to build something, not being sure whether it will work, but ultimately it works, and it was a great experience for them. Some of them were very, very good. So much so that we used to rely on some of our students to actually troubleshoot all the experiments. So even particular, new experiment did not work. Frankly, my own experimental abilities are not that great, so I was not really very confident of stepping in and trying to solve the issue. But there were a couple of students whom we just asked to handle this, and they usually managed to troubleshoot, find out the problem, solve it, and all that. And just along the lines, let me just say one more thing. When these students, the first year students, reached the third year, our lab equipment for the second year, the thermal physics lab, which was supposed to be in the second year, the equipment for that ultimately arrived. So because these students have never had a chance to use those equipments, it said that, okay, fine, we will give them a thermal physics lab. But then we realized that these students have done much more difficult experiments before that, and these would be rather trivial compared to that. So the entire third year lab, I remember RB and I took that lab. The entire third year lab was essentially, their job was essentially to set up the equipment, write down the manuals, essentially do our job. And frankly, they did a much better job of that than I definitely would have. But the point is, they enjoyed doing that, and they did not realize that we were actually cheating by making them do our stuff. So maybe I don't want to hog the entire conversation now, so I will just stop now. Maybe I will come in with something else later if I remember. There are many funny stories, by the way, but not all of them can be repeated.
Ananda,
yeah.
Put some light on the fact that how Professor Datta used to maintain our class timing.
Look, I was a very nice person that way. I always used to come on time. I never got scolded by Professor Datta as far as I remember. But there have been examples. You should ask Tapas Gupta to actually explain that. Frankly, okay, I was a visiting teacher at that time for the first year. So I had this advantage that I came in, took the class, went off to take my other classes. Thankfully, Jadavpur University, where I was a teacher at that time, also had a campus in Salt Lake, which was not too far. And I arranged that my classes would be on the day when I would also have classes in the Salt Lake campus. So at the beginning, I had to be very punctual. It's not that I am very punctual. I had to be very punctual because I was going there and then going to my other campus.
But what happened later on?
Later on, well, okay, I am punctual, by the way, as far as classes go. At least, hopefully, my students will not contradict that. So I did not get scolded.
You are definitely punctual to get in, but what about getting out?
That is a different story. I will not comment on that. But I have known Professor Datta to haul up people for not leaving the class on time.
Right.
Not me. I don't remember whether I have been hauled up. He will remember. He definitely will remember. Okay, he told us that he went to the US along with our founder director.
Yeah.
What he did not tell us is that if you press him, he can also tell you which seat number of the flight they used, exactly what they talked about during the flight, and so on. So, I will not put it beyond him that if he remembers having scolded me for not leaving on time someday. And I don't remember, honestly. But there have been plenty of people who have been scolded by Professor Datta about various things, including, especially about not leaving the class on time.
Professor Datta, some comment.
Well, first of all, I will say that lots of people talk about my memory, but it is actually going. Because some of the things that is stated, Ananda, that I do not remember. That this thing about Aguner Poroshmoni, and that the song went on for 8 minutes.
It seemed like 8 minutes. I'm not sure whether it was 8 minutes. It definitely seemed like 8 minutes.
Secondly is that some of the other, I remember the Phoenix box and Ananda actually helped a lot in doing all these things. And the second semester, in my opinion, was better because the more sophisticated instruments we had got it. Air track, air table, things that I had not even had a chance in my student life or even later, even in the US. I had taught undergraduate laboratory in the US, but even such things we had not seen. Anyway, that was an experience. And I remember in second year we had electron diffraction and we had electron PR and such things that I had never even seen before. So this was for me also a very much learning process. But then we moved to the new campus, etc. again, and there were many other things that we did. I forgot to mention that Amitabh Datta, one of our colleagues, a very respected one, he was a great theorist, but he also taught in the laboratory class, as did Ranjan Bhattacharya, again he was a classmate of mine. Then Ranjan's some relation, Shom Datta, he also taught with us in the lab for some time. And there was another gentleman from USA, Shomo. I forget his last name.
Shomo Chakraborty.
Shomo Chakraborty. So they are for sometimes. In the theory, Professor Binayak Dottai, who is my teacher also, he took a lot of hand in the initial days of the physics classes. Then Rajkumar Moitro, these names I did not mention. But perhaps we had talked enough about physics. The chemistry and biology part, somebody, some of you can say, I don't know very much as to what was going on there.
Yeah, actually, I have a comment. I have a comment already. Anindita is following us in Facebook, and she writes, I gave Professor Datta a major fright in my very first semester when I vanished with the entire second year class. So maybe she was taking classes outside and Professor Datta was looking at the classroom. So everybody remembers you somewhere or the other.
Now, I remember one funny incident. I don't remember you taking Balaram. But there
Right.
was, I used to go around this in Mohanpur campus. I was also kind of professor in charge of teaching at that time.
Right.
So that whether I remember one incident where it was Anandita Bhodro. She was a master. Then I went and found some student was on the dais, on the podium, and he was giving a lecture. And then I asked why you are a student and where is the lecturer? Where is she or he? Then Anandita was sitting in the front row and she stood up and said, I am the teacher. This I overlooked this idea.
Okay, I must mention one thing about Shabunda which Shabunda forgot to mention. There are many stories, by the way. Some of them, of course, cannot be said on air. No, not about Shabunda, but about other people. But Shabunda must remember his first conversation with Shabedi. But
What I
I distinctly remember that Shabunda telling Shabedi, your name cannot be Shabedi. There's no such name. It's either Shorbodi or Kabedi. So Shabedi had to keep on saying, no, my name is Shabedi. But Shabunda in his classic tone said, no, it can't be. Such a name is not possible.
What her name is? Name should be Kaberi and not Shabedi.
Yeah.
Because Kaberi is the name of the
Poor Shabedi was looking a bit uncertain about whether she remembered her own name or not. That much I can. So we say Bapen Nam Bhuliye Deva in Bangla. It was Bapen Deva Nam Bhuliye Deva. I'm not going to translate that.
So now what I will do, I will ask Subhajit to bring us to the Mohanpur campus from Calcutta. I think you are one of the first person who built the lab in Siviraman.
Well, yes. I think I should. I don't know if I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I should mention about my first day in the Mohanpur campus. So I was actually coming from Kancharapara station, and I took this bus number 27, I think. And I did not know how far it was from the station, and I kept on asking this conductor. And this poor guy didn't know where IISER was, and he has never heard of the campus. But fortunately, there was some student from some neighboring college who said, oh, I know IISER. So I said, no, IISER. He said, yeah, IISER, I know. So he gave me very clear instruction that you have to get down at gate number 2.5. Arai number gate, 2.5. And I thought he was a fan of Harry Potter and he was joking with me. There cannot be a gate named gate number 2.5. But on the way, first I saw this River Research Institute in the middle of nowhere, a River Research Institute, and then some Banana Research Institute, which completely threw me off. And the third thing I saw was even weird, a Ghungru pig farm. So, one bizarre thing after the other. And I finally reached gate number 2.5. And it was not really a gate, it was a hole in the wall. And through that hole, you basically need to walk 100 meters or so and reach our so-called J.C. Bose building, where Professor Swapan was there. And my first interaction with him was on the second floor where he had this room. And he asked me about where I was before coming here. And he basically asked me if I would be interested in living in the campus, which I was really interested. So then he arranged for a car so that I can go and check out some of the campus residences. And it was a long journey. I thought I was perhaps out of the campus. So I was actually taken to Lalbati. And on the way, I saw a few more weird things. So gate number 2.5 and Ghungru pig farm was not enough. I saw this bull cement farm, which was completely bizarre for me. And I was wondering whether I should go back for another postdoc or stay here and continue the job. And finally, I reached where I was supposed to live, this campus housing. And from the middle of nowhere, from a broken quarter, a man wearing just a towel came out, and this driver told me that he is the chief engineer of our campus. And I was very much shocked. I mean, one shock after the other on a single day. It was too much for me. And then they showed me the quarter where I could live. It was not really a quarter. It was a dilapidated building, under renovation, a tiny one. And I understood that it was not really the place to live. Now, finally, I got over the shock, and I was told that I have to teach a course right from whenever I arrived there. I have to teach this course, and it was a course on spectroscopy, and it was a lab. So I'm not a spectroscopist, but I know little bit about spectroscopy. So I agreed that it's a new job, you cannot really choose much, and I started teaching this spectroscopy course. So what happened was there was only one instrument, a UV-Vis spectrophotometer. Okay, and I was told that more instruments would be arriving to this campus, to the Mohanpur campus from the Kolkata campus. So I had planned the whole semester with this UV-Vis spectrophotometer, and then IR, then perhaps NMR, and a few other things, the fluorescence spectroscopy, of course. But as the semester progressed, I realized that none of those other instruments were going to show up. And I had to teach a whole semester of spectroscopy lab with only one instrument, UV-Vis spectrophotometer. And I tried to be creative, but the students, I remember the first batch we had Priyadarshi Ranjan, Argho Modak, Rahul Kumar, and I think Balaram might remember a few more from the chemistry. So after Nayan Sharma was there, yes. I mean, all of them are fantastic boys and girls. Well, there was no girl chemistry major student in the first year.
Yeah.
First batch. So they said, sir, we understand that you are teaching us a spectroscopy lab, but there is only one instrument. Is that all we do in spectroscopy? I said, well, you have to be patient. I'm told that the instruments are coming from Kolkata, and they might take some time. So they were quite patient, but it did not show up finally. So I actually designed some experiments. I had to be extremely creative and create some new experiments, and that was actually quite good because I got a paper out of these experiments. I didn't know that no one has ever done it. So I had a paper in the Journal of Chemical Education on some of these new experiments that I designed in my very first year at IISER Kolkata. But there are a few stories that I think I should mention about. And of course, since Professor Datta is here, when I was teaching one of the first lecture courses in the subsequent semester, I saw someone just walking past the door and again walking past the door. And I thought a student was moving around. I just thought there is someone who is too polite to get into the classroom. So I peeped out and I saw Professor Datta there. I asked him, oh, are you looking for me? Are you telling me something? Then I realized that it was one of those spying visits of Professor Datta, who was making sure that I was teaching properly and I was on time and so on. But he was just very polite and said, oh, no, you continue teaching. So I don't know if Professor Datta remembers this.
No, Subhajit, I don't remember. But what I remember about you is that in 2009 or thereabouts, when I was the chairman of this joint admission committee,
yes,
and Srimonti recommended that you are one of the best people to help us, and that you had played a great significant role in that admission process. This much I remember.
Yes,
You are also one of the few who have visited me in my house in Kollani, where I'm speaking, because you were in Kanpur IIT. My
right.
wife also was in Kanpur IIT. This much I remember.
Yes. So Balaram, I think it's already 6:10. You might like to
Add your own, right? But okay, let me just butt in a bit with a couple of things. Subhajit may not remember this, but we used to have classes in the JC Bose building, in the old JC Bose building. I used to take a class in the top floor. He used to take a class just below me, sometimes together. And we had this audio system which sometimes screwed up, and somehow his voice was audible in my room, and my voice would be audible in their room. So I'm pretty sure that the students had a wonderful time to figure out what was going on. Because suddenly in the middle of a drawing, I turn to the blackboard, draw something, turn back, and then I hear some bizarre chemistry is going on in the class. And the students start laughing because they knew what was going on that way. That used to happen sometimes. And because he mentioned this old campus, and he mentioned a lot of places which our students now may not even know, all this River Research Institute stuff, they may not have taken that road, so they wouldn't even know, perhaps. But because he mentioned the old campus, let me just say one thing. When the idea came up that we are going to transit to that particular campus, Sriram and I had this job of going there, inspecting the buildings. In particular, Sriram's job, my job was primarily to accompany him as an assistant. Sriram, who was our technical person, who was this networking, etc. guy whom we, apart from being a wonderful physics teacher, he was also all our main computer person. Our job primarily was to figure out whether we can at all set up a network in that building. So I remember one day we took the institute winger and traveled all the way. The road was horrible. That much I do remember, and it's still not much of an improvement even now, but it's still better than what it used to be. But once we got there, we had a shock because most people even those people who have seen the JC Bose building, have seen the JC Bose building after it was renovated. We had the honor of seeing it as it was, completely out of some horror movie. It was just broken down, no doors, a window which was, and in fact you couldn't even enter through the door because somehow it had rained a lot the previous day, and water was falling down in sheets in front of the door. So we found the window which was broken, and Sriram and I managed to climb in through the window and get into the building. And the only trouble was, once we got in, we realized that we would not be able to go out through the same route because we had to jump down quite a long way to enter the roof. So it would be impossible for us to get back. So we had to come out through the door, getting thoroughly wet in the process. And one worry we had was we had to put up a microwave tower on top of the building for our network to connect us with Calcutta. At that time, we were both going to be situated both in Calcutta and in Mohanpur at the same time, and in that campus at the same time. So we were all very unsure whether the building will at all take the weight of the microwave tower. And then we had to recommend, the original idea was to put the library on the top. But with one look at the building, and we said it's impossible to put a library on the top floor. It has to be on the ground floor because the floor simply will not take that weight. And frankly, when we first saw the building after it was renovated, it was a revelation. We had never thought that it could look that good. It ended up looking pretty decent, looking like a new building. And I'm not sure whether anybody has pictures of, some big pictures must be floating around somewhere, of the buildings as they used to be.
Yeah.
As they used to be before the renovation. That would be a real before and after story that way.
Right.
Okay, now Balaram, please. We have not been allowing you to speak.
No. Subhajit, you have a question to answer. It is from Priti Thomas.
Oh.
All of you must remember her. I think also. So Priti is asking, we used to wait for Subhajit sir's classes. Sir, do you have an unsaid competition with NB, sir, to win the title of the best teacher every year?
Oh, no, not at all. I think NB is far better than me. And I think I should mention the names of few more people who we should definitely remember. Of course, Professor Datta and Ananda mentioned about Ranjan Bhattacharya, Professor Ranjan Bhattacharya, AD, Professor Rajkumar Mitra from physics. But there are a few people. I remember in biology, there was Prasad, NG Prasad, right? Who is in IISER Mohali. Yeah.
Prasad was very good.
He was a fantastic teacher. Of course, Srimanti was there. Srimanti Sarkar, who is in Bose Institute now. There were a few more people who are still around. Of course, Balaram himself is a good teacher. Sadin is a good teacher. Now Sayonda has joined. He is a fantastic teacher. Other than that, in earth science, of course, Professor Somnath Dasgupta, he is still around. Professor Somnath Dasgupta was an outstanding teacher. I heard about Professor Nibir Mondal, who was also a good teacher. And there was another Prasad in earth science. I don't know, Balaram, you remember? Some Prasad.
GVR Prasad.
Yes. GVR Prasad.
Yeah.
He was an absolutely gorgeous teacher. He was a fantastic teacher. So there are so many people. And Preeti...
you're forgetting Shogat.
Of course, we did not talk about the...
Okay, but they're still around, right? Okay, so we are not talking about them.
Shogato and Ashokda both. In earth science, of course, I also heard that Prasanto was a very good teacher. Prasanto Sharma. So I think there are lots of very good teachers. You happen to be one of the chemistry students and you took my class. But there are definitely a lot of very good people, and we are fortunate that at IISER Kolkata that we do have a lot of very good colleagues who are good teachers. Thank you.
Okay. So when NB's name came, I remember my first day at IISER Kolkata. I joined from CDRI Lucknow. So what I decided that 31st December night, I will board the train from Kanpur Central with my extended family. That means my own family plus 5 of my students. So we started from Lucknow around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, then boarded the train, and since it was the last day of the no sleep at all during the journey, reached Sialda station and 2 big cars full with our staffs, and we also together 8 people. So we came down to this IIT Kharagpur Extension Center. I didn't know about the other things, but the initial pitch was like that. I'm coming from CDRI, that's a old system. And here the first thing is that there was someone sitting on the door, like a representative, and he welcomed us. Then we went upstairs to the director's room. Emmanuel Alexander, he was the secretary. So he said, "Oh, so you are Dr. Mukhopadhyay. These are your papers." So I said, okay, everything was there. So 1 or 2 signatures or something like that. Then I asked that, okay, I had a discussion with the director that my students are going to join from today only, so that it is going to be continued. So they have completed their journey in CDRI 31st December. From 1st January, they will start. So I have finished all those things and then came down. Then we were supposed to go to the NITTR guest house. After that, I came back, and in the afternoon, NV was there. And he was asking me, "Oh, so you are Balaram?" Yes. Then he said, actually, he was not accepting my joining at all. So in the morning, what happens, by the time I came, it was around 11:30, and we came around 10:30. He was supposed to join on the same day, but Emmanuel didn't have any clue. He was only looking at my file because the students are coming. Maybe Professor Datta instructed him that he is coming with his student and things like that. So he just completely denied. He said, no. You are Professor Narayana Ji. No. It should be Balaram Mukhopadhyay. So he just kind of defied, and then Ananda said he has to take out all his documents from his bag to convince Emmanuel that he is also a candidate to join that day. So that was the beginning of the journey. And what Subhajit was telling about the lab development and things like that, only with the UV spectrometer. My first student, his name is also Dasgupta. He is actually from his hometown, that means Triveni area. So he knew him very well, and Subhajit used to talk to him before joining here at IISER Kolkata.
Well, I knew him from his childhood.
Yeah. So one day, Somnath was a little bit worried, and he said, "Sir, actually Subhajit Da sent me a mail, and I'm a little bit worried about this." I said, "What happened?" "No, sir, actually he is asking that what kind of lab he is going to get, what kind of office he is going to get." So I told him that, yes, you are going to get a space definitely, and then you have to set up the lab. And then Subhajit Da is asking me, what do you mean by set up the lab? So definitely what Somnath was thinking about, that, oh my God, he is coming from US, Canada and things like that. And after coming here, already he doesn't know what is the meaning of what the lab and what is going to happen. That is almost for all of us, what happened one day, Professor Datta told that we are going to good campus. But Ananda must remember our Jurobi guest faculty meeting. Professor Datta was there as well. We were really interested to have those faculty meetings in Jurobi guest house for that real Bengali khana.
Right.
At Nepali cook, he used to cook really fantastic food for us.
Yeah, that was very good.
Then one day, Professor Datta said, okay, that's it. Now you have to pack up from Calcutta and go to North. First day when we came, the Siviraman building was only ground floor. And the first floor was getting ready. All the pillars and everything. So by that way we started. I have got another comment from our student, Professor Datta, you will remember, Sampi Mansa.
Sampi Mansa, right?
Yes,
Sampi Manasa, yes.
Yeah. So she writes, I still remember back in 2008-9, when during the gatherings like Teachers' Day, Republic Day celebration, etc., SKD sir would stand on a chair and give speech to the full crowd. One of the greatest teachers, SKD sir. So still remembers you. Before going to any other topic, there is one of the topic what student really interested to know from you. The thing is that they believe the requirement of student-friendly teaching methods. And we have few points and request you if this can be discussed in the panel.
Frank, okay, before we go there, can I just take one moment? I will present a picture. I just found a picture which I want to present to you.
Okay.
Well, since you mentioned NB, and since this is one of the very few pictures I have of my time in the intermediate campus. Okay, let's see. Entire screen. Let's just allow this for the time being. Okay, I will just show this picture. I hope it will be visible to you. So this was under the time. This is something which I guess Ghulam sent me, or Shogo. I don't know whether it's Ghulam or Shogo who took this picture. Maybe Ghulam. This was on the way to submitting the copies on time. Of course, both NB and I were rather tardy in that respect. I'm pretty sure we were 7 days late or something. And Srimanti was the dictator at that time. Yeah. So Srimanti was almost Hitler-like in that, and she had issued a diktat that get the copies in here or else. So the two of us had to carry them on our head like this.
Ananda, are you sure the picture was not taken by me? Because I remember.
Could even be you.
Yeah.
I don't remember who. I think Ghulam sent me the picture after finding it from an old file recently. So, I mean, I had hair at that time, so must be really old. Okay, anyway, that's
Fantastic picture.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I should mention just very briefly, the first labs that we had in the chemistry department, I think Raja, myself and Jyoti, the size of the labs we had was 133 square feet or 39 square feet. And I thought it was my office and I would have a separate lab. And that time Balaram and of course Professor Datta and Professor Dasgupta, all of them very clearly clarified that it was not my office, it was the lab. There was no office as such. And we basically started with that. We never really complained. Once I complained that it's too little, it was not enough for me and my students to be inside the room. I had to stay outside the room and do all my work. And then I had been given another extra 90 square feet shared with Jyotirmay Das, who is in cultivation of science doing great, and Raja. So, but one thing that I should emphasize, I think we never really complained. We did all the work that were assigned to us, and at the same time we were happy, right? I think we all were very happy, and because of all these common problems, we were together. All of us, we sort of dealt with.
We had to face a lot of problems, but we had to do it together anyway.
And I think that also builds some degree of friendship among all of us. I mean, physics, chemistry, biology, we all were under this tiny little space, and we talked over the tea. We had this great goat tea stall where goat would eat and faculty would drink tea at the same time. And NB used to call it flotel. It was on the drain.
Yeah.
Well, don't say on the drain. It was on a platform which was placed on the drain. The food was not on the drain.
I think we are deviating from the serious question that Balaram is asking me.
I guess we were trying to do that deliberately.
Yeah. One thing we must tell our new student, because they all know Bodhi, the Malkin of the flotel.
Okay.
Yeah.
She is running a shop in gate number 7. So all our new students, they also know her, but they didn't see that fantastic flotel.
Yeah. But since you have mentioned the flotel, I can't resist mentioning my involvement there. You remember the omelette story?
Which story?
Please tell us.
No, it's not such a great story, except that it just goes to illustrate how much of a glutton I am. I always used to have a double egg omelette out there. Okay.
Right.
So one day, I had actually had a couple of eggs in the morning. So I went there and said, don't give me two eggs today. Fine. So after a while, what came was a huge omelette. So it turned out that she couldn't believe that I wanted only one egg. So since I told her that please don't give me 2 eggs, she had put in 4.
Right.
Okay.
And
right,
there are many.
Balaram, this is your job.
Yeah.
Keep us on the track with the questions.
So I think we'll discuss a little bit on this thing, because students really want to know kind of a student-friendly teaching method. So it clearly suggests that they are not happy completely.
Well, can I open my mouth?
Yes, sure.
And well, since specifically you ask about the student-friendly teaching method, there is only one method, which is none. I don't think there is any method for teaching. It's not that one shoe would fit all. You basically have to understand 2 things. One is, what is the level of the class? You have to take a pulse like a doctor in the class, in the first few classes, understand where they are, and you also know what you have to deliver. And then find the perfect balance between the two. I don't think there is any single method. I mean, I teach my son and daughter, and both of them have a very different way of learning. So I don't think the same method would operate for both of them equally. And same thing in the class, right? There are so many students, all of them are individuals, and they have different ways of learning. So I don't think there is any unique method, but maybe, I don't know, Ananda and Professor Datta, Balaram, all of you can say certain things about this.
Well, I'm only looking for a teacher-friendly teaching method. I don't even have one yet. So forget student-friendly. And frankly, I don't know whether that's a good thing, but I've rather been student-unfriendly in my teaching methods, rather deliberately. At least let me tell you, the very first class I ever took, that mechanics class I was talking about, I had this problem that here were all these kids who were all from the IIT stream at that time, that all cracked the IIT exams and they thought at least that they knew a lot about mechanics, the subject I was supposed to teach. And I had this problem that if I go and teach them basics of mechanics, they will just think that they know all of it. So what's the point? So what I did in the very first class was essentially teach them that they don't know Newton's laws. So that actually helped at least to ensure that they listened to me for the rest of the semester. So otherwise, they would simply have said, what's the point? It's the same old thing, we all know that by heart. And frankly, the student-friendly teaching methods are not necessarily good for the students. Depends. It's not good for all students. Nothing can be good for all students at the same time. Unfortunately, today our classes are big, so we cannot really respond to individual needs that much. So there has always been a debate as to how big a class should we have, maybe 40, maybe 60, maybe 80. My point is any class beyond 30 is infinitely big. You cannot really pay attention to whether a given student is listening to you or not. So one thing I will definitely ask the students, they have to communicate. So unless you come back and tell us that you are not really feeling the pulse of a course, and do it in real time, writing a feedback later is fine. As somebody who started the feedback system, I'm definitely in favor of it. But you should not really wait till the end of the course to give feedback. Why don't you just tell your teacher that, okay, this thing you taught yesterday didn't make sense at all. It's always possible, right? It's always possible that a teacher had an off day, or he or she may not be that conversant in that particular topic. I'm pretty sure that if you just go and tell the teacher that this did not work out, and one problem is, what happens is in a big class, many students think that everybody else must be getting the topic. I'm the only one who is being left behind. So I should keep my mouth shut, otherwise the other people will think that I'm not really up to their standards. Frankly, I'm pretty sure most people will be thinking the same. And that's why they all keep quiet. It may be that the teacher has simply taught rubbish on the days. We all do that. On a particular day, maybe I'm not prepared very well, or maybe some question has come in, just completely thrown me. And I say something which didn't make much sense. If the teacher realizes that on his or her own is fine, then he or she can correct. Sometimes we don't realize. Sometimes the students to make us realize. So I would say the most student-friendly thing could be for the students themselves to speak up and say, okay, this particular thing did not make sense, why don't you explain it again? I'm sure no teacher would mind that. At least if this is honestly done. Of course, if it's done to sort of slow down the class so that you get less in the exam, that is also something which is very easy to understand, by the way. So please don't try it.
Right. Professor Datta.
Yes. Yes.
Little bit on your views about education itself. Definitely touching this point of the teaching method, but other day when we were talking over the phone, you were saying that the education itself has some meaning. So can you put some light on that?
Yes. The thing is that when I was in IISER, I did not actually take much part in except one semester when I taught electronics. And at that time I had noted the following event, that as long as I was facing the board and writing something on the board, the general commotion in the class was high. As soon as I turned around and faced them, then they all fell silent. I had always tried to teach in my own particular way, but I had since I was not much of a teacher. Although I did teach in Kolkata University for 3 years, but after that I was in Shaha Institute of Nuclear Physics, where mainly I did research, although I took some post-MSc class. Then in Nuclear Science Center, where I worked for 16 years, I was in charge of the PhD program and so on, and gave lectures. But regular classes we did not give very much. But generally what I had found, that I was a very good speaker, but as a teacher I am not sure how effective I was. Because in my life what I have seen, when I took some private tuitions, I tried to be as explicit as possible, but that was in my standard. What the student got from me, I never could really fathom out. Because in many cases it happened after some 2-3 months, the student just disappeared and never came back to take any lessons to me. Personally, in my life, I do not believe I have learned very many things from teachers. I like teachers, they gave good lectures. I would take down their notes. In examinations, I could reproduce because I had good memory and I had good writing skill. And I did good, my result was also very good. But generally speaking, all the knowledge that I had imbibed, I feel I got it myself. By thinking about things, reading things. Maybe I took some things from teachers, but generally I do not believe in my life I have particularly benefited from teachers as such. And therefore my view is that you can probably never be taught. You have to teach yourself. But if you are really interested in something, then you generally find out about it. For instance, I was particularly interested in astronomy since I was a child. And much I knew about astronomy, but mostly I had found out from books and things. In physics, as I said, I always had good results, but I am not sure I am a good physicist, because my interest in physics was never that much. Later on, after I retired, then I had some interest in physics because personally I read about this thing, that thing, and so on. Similarly, in chemistry and biology also, I imbibed some knowledge by my own thing. So I believe that what they say about teachers, that perhaps after all, a person cannot be taught. He has to teach it himself. If he has the interest, he will find out. A teacher can only help. This is my feeling about this. Now I was going to talk about science education, I had told Balaram. In my life, I now find, in this fag end of my life, that generally speaking, we do not have the scientific spirit, the scientific temperament. Namely, that majority of the people I see around me, they do not particularly resort to logical thinking. I believe that in science, after all, you should associate there is a cause and there is an effect, and then think logically. 90% of the population that I come across, they do not think logically. They have been told something and they just follow it. They never. I believe that in the brain capacity, there is not much variation. What I know, what you know, and what a general person who acts as a domestic help in my house probably also has the same brain capacity. But nonetheless, the question is of using this brain capacity. Now, I was asked to write an article in one of the girls' schools magazine here. They had a 50-year golden jubilee or something. They asked me to write about scientific temperament and its need in public life. So I wrote there. I later on gave a lecture in Paschim Bongo Vigyan Monch also. But generally what I tried to tell them is that science is not where somebody in the position of authority tells you that this is what you have to do. Is proper scientific spirit is one where the scientist gives you the facts. It gives you the reasoning. Then you figure it out yourself. If you do not believe that this fellow is talking right, then you do not have to take it. After all, this is the main difference between science and non-science. In our earlier parts of the civilization, that people would be told that this is the way to go, this is the way you think, everything would be laid down. Maybe because majority of the people doesn't want to use their brain. They would rather be told that this is to be done and they will follow it blindly. But the scientific spirit is one, as I envisage it, is that you use your brain, you find out if the thing is right or wrong. Science is not where I as a scientist tell you that this is exactly what should be done, no questions asked, and you follow it blindly. But unfortunately, most people want to do it this way. In this corona environment, I find everywhere that people are absolutely unscientific, illogical, irrational in their approach. In my next house, some gentleman had come back from Jaipur. He was asked to stay in quarantine for 15 days by the municipality. Fine, he stayed here. But he had another apartment in the same complex. And in one floor, there were 3 apartments. So he had 2 and somebody else had another. When he would try to move from his apartment to his second apartment, the gentleman in the middle apartment would say that you were using common passage and you were not allowed to do this. This fellow who had come back from Rajasthan, he did not have corona. He was subjected to various tests. All he was trying to do is to move across a common passage to the next one. But the gentleman disagreed that maybe it will be dangerous to us because I have child. There was somebody who had corona some 10 apartments away from my house. And the gas people would not deliver my gas for 15 days because in that locality, in one flat, in one apartment, there has been a corona case. No matter what I tell them, that you can, they tell us that don't go to the ATM, bring a sanitizer with you, sanitize your notes, sanitize the ATM machine, etc. I tried to tell them that you do not worry about all this. You may have virus spread all over your face, everything doesn't matter. Until you actually touch your finger to the virus and bring it into your sense organs, there is nothing to worry about. All this fall in deaf ears and they just go by what they think is correct. When I was teaching in Kalyani University, I had a senior colleague, Professor Dasgupta, maybe some of you know him. I had once told him jocularly that 90% of the people do not believe in scientific temperament, logic or spirit. He told me, Swapan, you are wrong. 7% people do not believe in scientific spirit. This is what the case is.
Thank you, Professor Datta. One more aspect students want to know, or rather to comment on, is that the importance of arts in science education. I believe that's a very important issue. And may I request Subhajit to start a bit on this?
It's a difficult question too, but I'll tell you what I think, because I myself I am associated with certain things related to art, and I am very proud to be the founder president of the IISER Kolkata Arts Club. Although I am out of the loop by now, but I think the basic process of science and arts are not very different, because ultimately the goal of both science and arts is creating something, right? The goal is to create something. You start from 2 different points and you ultimately converge, right? Now, science would involve rational thinking. Rationality is something that is extremely important. You need certain knowledge, a background knowledge. You need to understand something, and then you need to apply, and then you need to analyze something and evaluate, and then you finally create something. Now, if you think of arts, it's not too different, because there are certain things that you need to learn, you need to apply, and then you create. So I think it is basically doing the same thing from 2 different approaches. Now, art as an extracurricular activity is something that is really important, because Shall I think we can have a separate discussion on this little bit later. But I would also like to hear from Professor Datta, who himself is a good singer and
Yes.
appreciates art. So I would really like to hear something from Professor Datta, and I'd request him to comment on this because it's already quite late.
Well, I believe that I am really not much of a scientist, because my inclination was always in literature. After I passed the higher secondary exam, where I had also stood among the first 5 people, but it was mainly because I more or less topped in English and Bengali. In this physics, chemistry, mathematics, I had high marks, but the others were much higher. The only reason I went to science was actually from an economic point of view. I knew that I had come from a middle class family, I had a large family, and there was some help expected from me. And I knew that it was much easier to get a proper good paying job if I had pursued science. That is why I went to science and I took physics. Because among these 3, mathematics, chemistry, and physics, physics was the one that I liked the best of these 3. Fine. So I went on through this thing, both here in Calcutta University, Shaha Institute, and universities abroad. And I had always pursued it as a means of furthering my career. So I would even say that many of my colleagues that I had seen later who had not done so well, let us take Professor Sushanto. Sushanto was a good student. He did not come to Presidency College, he came from Vidyasagar, but he still obtained a first class in BSc, and in MSc also he did very well. However, after we went to the USA, we would often make telephone calls. I had other friends, some 13 or 14 of our batch went to this US at the same time at various universities. We would talk about this. I had told IISER students also that we talk to these other fellows of mine, other fellow students, and talk about all kinds of trivialities, how enjoyable was life, how we had a new car, we went here and there and so on. But with Sushanto, it was different. Even in that first or second year, when you talk to me on the phone, he will tell about stochastic processes and as to what he was learning and what he was doing. So there I could see a person who was actually enjoying what he was doing. For me, it was more that something that had to be done. And since I was doing it, I tried to do it well, that's all. But therefore, to be really successful in life, science also, everywhere, that your heart must be in it. This I keep telling to other people nowadays, that you should only do that in life which you really enjoy. Because after all, much of your life you will be pursuing your occupation, your employment. 1/3 of your life or maybe half of your life, much of the time you were spending there. So it is better that you try to do something in a state which you like. Whether you are playing cricket, whether you are taking part in producing a movie, or you are a music fan, you like singing and so on. Whatever you do, your heart must be in it. That's the only way to get success in it. So I do not particularly think I myself am very successful. Now coming back to the arts, that it is my heart was always there. In fact, when I left, I don't know if you know this, I had a book of poems that I had written sometime, and this I gave to Sushanto, who gave it to Narayan Banerjee, who was in charge of the library. And he said I would put it in the library. I don't know whether you ever got it. I had written several poems. Various times I have written several stories also. In fact, in that one magazine, which Ananda might remember, it was called Unmesh. The first one that was published there, I wrote a science fiction story.
You wrote a science fiction story?
That was really... You wrote a science fiction story? Yeah, science fiction story. So, however, the point is, when I thought that, okay, my career is over, I have retired, now I can do whatever I want, I have enough money, I do not worry about the financial situation. When I started to write things, then I realized just because I had good knowledge of language, this is not enough. That I really need to have experience of real life. So real classic literature is one where you have some message to convey, but this message must bear with truth, the reality. Now coming back to Subhajit then, I believe that the science of the arts or other aspects of life is some of reality. There is basic underlying reality. You can approach it from various directions. Science is one way. It may even be that science is not everything. That after all, we have all these lots of emotion that you cannot express by a differential equation or anything. Now, it is of course possible that the universe is ultimately unknowable fully. That some part of it we understand, but there are many other things that we do not understand. I have a quarrel with my wife. I don't know why. She says something bad, I say something bad. No matter whatever reasoning I have, ultimately this cannot be explained. Maybe the human nature, this nature of the Homo sapiens, is basically illogical. That they have developed some way in the evolution. Perhaps your emotion play much higher role than intellect. At least in the beginning, you did not have much intellect. You relied upon your emotion to get through life, that you survived. Because you were afraid, you ran away. Because you did not like, you hit your neighbor, etc. This allowed you to survive. Now, if you would go about thinking and questioning as to whether this was right, this was wrong, then it may be too late. You will be dead by that time. So therefore, the basic underlying reality, the arts, humanities, other things, other modes that this civilization has developed, is also expressing that reality. And maybe you will never be able to get that through in science. Science is one aspect, probably some other facet of the reality that it expresses, and the arts and humanities also will be there. They are very satisfying also. Okay.
Right. So quite a lot of serious discussions are going, and since we are talking about arts, now I will request Professor Datta to sing few lines from Tagore. Because all of us, we know you are a very good singer.
I am not a very good singer, although I did have a little formal lesson sometime in life, but I liked music since I was a child and so forth. And maybe to an accomplished singer, this might not sound very well. But since Balaram has requested, he actually asked me to sing Amar Shesh Paranir Kori Continue. But this I do not believe is of the proper.
Well, that would be a bit too depressing. Yeah.
At that time, because that I sang in a private party where it was my expression of life at that time. But here, considering the general public, I'll sing a song I'm not very comfortable with, because that's not one of my things that I normally do. But Professor Sushanto Dattagupta, when he was Vice Chancellor of this Vishwabharati, he had once come, I believe it was 2013 or 14 or something. In the guest house at the IIS, here we had a little get-together party. Several people from physics were there. Some ladies, wives of our faculty were there. Some of them were accomplished singers. So they requested Sushanto to sing a song. Sushanto also sings. Perhaps not as good as Ranjan Bhattacharya, who is an accomplished singer. But he can also sing.
Aabir was one of the best singers I have heard. So
Yeah.
He had good lessons, and since childhood he was nice.
in JU, he used to be a regular music teacher. Anyway.
Yes. In any case, I will sing a song. It's called Prano Horiye, Trisha Horiye, because that will be more on the proper positive. And since I am at home, I will use the harmonium. This is audible? Is it audible?
Yes, it is.
Yes, but we cannot see you.
Yeah, but you've moved out of screen.
Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
You can see me?
Yeah. Now it's fine.
Is the sound Sharegama?
Yeah, it's okay.
Can you hear me?
It's good. Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
মনে আরো 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 দাও স্থান মোরে আরো 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 দাও প্রাণ প্রাণ ভরে ত্রিশহরে মোরে আরো আরো দাও প্রাণ সুরে বাঁশি পুরে প্রাণ ভরে ওকে, I leave it here. এটা শোনা গেছে? হ্যালো?
Yeah, of course.
মানে গানটা শোনা গেছে আনন্দ?
একদম
Can you hear me?
খুব ভালো। Yeah, perfectly. খুব ভালো শোনা গেছে। The song actually sounded much better than the audio for the rest of the time. They sounded perfect, actually. So Balaram has more difficult questions for us.
বলরামটা চলে গেছে এখান থেকে।
Oh, good.
Yeah. No.
আবার শেষ হতে ফিরিয়া।
বলরাম, was it okay?
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah.
I was waiting for you to ask me to sing. Because I'm just waiting for you to ask me to sing.
Yeah, all of us, we are going to sing for Professor Datta.
No, I am going to sing at the end because that way nobody will survive after that.
Yeah. That's what, before logging off, we are going to do that. Otherwise, people won't survive. So, let me tell you.
Just one thing. Balaram, just one thing. I had a message from NB,
Right.
who is watching this, it seems, and keeping track on whether we are exaggerating something about. Well, we can't relate his stories. His stories are his own to relate. But he actually gave a clarification that the picture was taken by Ghulam. So,
Okay.
Subhajit, not yours.
Okay. I have a different one of the same thing.
That's the same thing.
Yeah.
Might be.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a very famous
I'll tell you
expedition.
later on. But there is one thing that I could also mention that I have learned from NB. NB said when you are having a discussion, it's very important to remember that your audience at the end should think, oh, why did it finish? They should not be thinking,
Why
is it not
don't they?
finishing?
Yeah.
So,
That's a hint. That's a hint.
I think it's a relevant point to ponder about.
Yeah, that's a big hint for Balaram. and because Balaram is after all the person who can let us go now and let us to audience off the hook for this. And also all these questions that were circulated, they're horribly difficult questions, and all of them individually would merit one whole discussion by people more competent than me.
Yeah, but we are not going by those questions. We are taking the questions from the live viewers.
And they are asking those difficult questions.
Yeah, they are also asking difficult questions.
Okay, I have to put the charger on because the battery is little low.
Yeah, I think before concluding, there is one which I believe a bit serious because it is our student. Those who are feeling about it, definitely it has some merit in it. Many of the students feels that in the academic institution, there are some things that are happening nowadays. Of course, they are talking about something which is beyond academics or other than academics, and they're really upset about that. So definitely, we want panelists to take a note of it, that they are unhappy, And if we have something to say about it, it may be political, it may be personal. So they don't want these things to come into the picture of the academic institutes all over. So this is a feeling what has come out from the discussion, what is going on in Facebook parallelly. If you want to have something to say about it.
Well, I can say only one thing about this. Of course, the primary focus of an academic institute should be in academics. But the academic institution is not outside the world in general. So if you are thinking at the same breath, if you are thinking that arts is something you should inculcate, you cannot just give up life. And life, unfortunately, is not always to your, well, what you would expect or accept. So things happen, but of course the primary focus should be in academics, and this should be the primary goal. That there is no doubt about that. Anything else, if it comes in, you can't really prevent life from coming in from various directions. But you should keep your focus right. That's important.
Yeah.
Subhajit, you want to add something?
Well, I think just a little bit more than what Ananda was saying. We are not living in a bubble, right? We are very much inside an ecosystem, and IISER is within that ecosystem. Now, if it comes to politics and well, first let's talk about politics. We are affected by the politics, and quite often science gets its beating. Right? There might be certain people who might not like rational thinking. They have their own agenda, but we as a scientist need to keep the lamp on, and we believe what we believe in. We cannot go out of rationality. So as teachers, I am or we are all thinking independently, but at the same time, there is one very important thing we should remember. We might disagree on a lot of things, but there should be a common ground where we should agree that this is the way to disagree. Okay?
Right.
And I respect what you are thinking. I might not agree to your opinion, but I should have some basic respect to what you are thinking, because your thinking is also rational, or at least supposed to be rational. I guess that is what I'd like to say. That
Right.
we would differ in opinion. Of course, we would differ in opinion. As independent scientists, we all would have our own opinion, but at the same time, we should have the respect of to other people's opinion. That is all I'd say.
Professor Datta?
No, nothing much to add, except to say that this is my view, that basically genetically we are programmed to look after our own. That is to say, we do not care too much about others. Nonetheless, we gradually understood that to lead reasonable life, you need other people's. I can live individually, but then I have to get my own food, I have to get my own clothes, I have to get my own shelter and so on. But the society has the advantage that people can actually specialize then, and somebody can make the food for everybody, merely clothes and shelters. Instead of going horizontally, if I go vertically, that means one person specializes, then another person specializes. That way we have a much better life. That is why society is also useful. Personally, we may be genetically programmed to look after our own self-interest. But through careful thought and analysis, we have realized that society is needed for our own survival. Therefore, as you were saying, that whatever profession or whatever, etc., you are not living in an ivory tower. You are not isolated from other people. You have to think of other people's thing also. Although, as I say, we are generally selfish people. That I like it very much when you praise me, but I do not particularly like to praise you. But because I live in a society, then I understand that this much compensation I have to give. I have to also praise other people if I want. If I want some benefit from them, I also need to behave in a manner so that they also benefit from us. So therefore, there are other people, they have other views. Those views may not be same as mine, but to have an effective society, you must allow our people to also live their own way in some manner that we can sort of coexist. Some peaceful coexistence is needed, and for that, if I have to give up some of my own selfish interest, I have to do that in the greater interest not of the society but of myself also. So generally, we have to live in a harmonious manner and respect our people's feelings. Is my view.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Datta. So now we have the last ritual in Bengali, which is called the Chatai Tola. Now everything is over, and as I said, I requested Ananda, I am requesting Subhajit also to sing together for Professor Datta. And
I would not want to impose that trauma on either Professor Datta or the audience.
No. Otherwise, the
Well,
Chatai
I can
is not
sing
going
if I
to
get
be out.
allowed to.
Subhajit can do enough for both of us.
No. You have to.
I can mute my microphone, right?
No, you cannot. You cannot. At this moment, you cannot. Because
Look,
I feel
this
like
year we did not have the Teachers' Day ragging, and that's why they have appointed you to do that for
अरे
them.
यार मैं तो सेम बिरादरी का ही हूँ, मैं क्यों रैग करूँ?
वो तो लगता नहीं है अभी तो लग रहा है कि तुम उस तरफ चले गए हो.
Anyway, let us end it with 2 lines at least. পুরানো সেই দিনের কথা ভুলবি কি রে, হায় সে চোখের দেখা প্রাণের কথা সে ভোলা যায়। পুরানো সেই দিনের কথা ভুলবি কি রে, চোখের দেখা প্রাণের কথা কি ভোলা যায়। Thank you very much. I hope our students also.
I hope they're still there and they're still alive after this. But anyway.
Well, thank you for tolerating us for 2 hours almost. 1.5.
Thank you, Professor Datta, for being with us.
It's really good to see Professor Datta after a long time.
Yeah.
I also
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Balaram, and
Okay.
Ananda and my students, dear students who are listening to the program.
Okay, bye.
Okay. We are now signing off.
Bye.
Bye.